Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And thank you for joining this session, arranged by Dar Al Rahmah. And we have a very special guest today, Shaykh Eesa Niamatullah. And before we start, the best thing for us to do is we'll introduce Shaykh Khaled Gamal, who is going to be reciting some verses from the Qur'an, inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون ولقد فتنا الذين من قبلهم فليعلمن الله الذين صدقوا وليعلمن الكاذبين أم حسب الذين يعملون السيئات أن يسبقونا ساء ما يحكمون من كان يرجو لقاء الله فإن أجل الله لآت وهو السميع العليم ومن جاهد فإنما يجاهد لنفسه إن الله لغني عن العالمين والذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لنكفرن عنهم سيئاتهم ولنجزينهم أحسن الذي كانوا يعملون.
Jazakallah khairan, Shaykh Khaled. Beautiful recitation as always. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Mohammed Rashid. I'm from Dar Al Rahmah, Islamic Weekend School. And I just to introduce everyone into this call, 1 year in from the onset of COVID, and there's still a lot of confusion around the whole topic. The confusions come around, what do we do when we become ill, or have some symptoms? How do we deal with bereavement? There's a very controversial topic of vaccinations, the Sheikh's favorite topic, and mental health, which is a very taboo subject amongst the community. And that's why we've arranged Shaykh Abu Eesa today to enlighten us with his expert knowledge in the deen, as also in terms of the field of medicine. And before we go on to that, inshallah, I wanted to first of all introduce who Dar Al Rahmah are. So we're a weekend Islamic supplementary school. We've been established for 14 years. We use modern teaching strategies and currently are basing all of our classes online using Google Meet and Classroom because of the COVID situation. We're based in Seven Kings High School, which is, I believe, the school that Shaykh Abu Eesa used to go to. Is that correct?
It is, yeah.
MashaAllah. We teach children from the age of 3+, and we try to cover topics which are really important in today's society, things like anti-bullying, mental health, and even cleanliness in the bathroom, another favorite topic of the Shaykh, as you may have seen from his YouTube videos. So this session was for us to be able to give something back to our parents from Dar Al Rahmah, as well as the wider community, inshallah. I don't think the Shaykh needs much of an introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. So he's been cast as an original, thank God he doesn't have too much of an Essex accent. He studied pharmacy at the University of Manchester and then went on to do anthropology. And in terms of the deen, he's studied Arabic, Islamic law, and Qur'an with memorization from scholars from all around the world, mashallah. He is the founder of Prophetic Guidance. Many of you may have listened to him or watched him with his courses there, and he's an instructor for Al-Maghrib. He has conducted series on Islam channel, Al-Adab al-Mufrad, and he's also the vice chair of Al-Qalam Sharia panel. Many of you may have also seen him or have been with him on Hajj groups, which he's been running for over 20 years. In fact, I was actually supposed to go on Hajj with him last year, but obviously the COVID had other plans for us. So I make dua that I can go with the Shaykh this year or next year, if Allah wills, and I hope that we can all get the chance to do that, because I've heard quite a lot of stories about his Hajj programs and how beneficial they are for people's personal development in Islam. So just to reiterate, we're going to talk a bit about, or the Sheikh's going to talk a bit about dealing with the illness, bereavement, vaccinations, and mental well-being. So just for everyone's benefit, Sheikh, we've muted everybody for the moment. Feel free to let me know if you want us to unmute. We have everyone's video is off, but if you want people's video to come on, please tell us. And also, if you want to do a Q&A, if we have time, inshallah, just let us know and we'll facilitate that through the chat, inshallah, or through audio, as you wish. So I'm now going to hand you over to the Shaykh. Jazakallah khairan for blessing us. And I ask you to please start, inshallah.
وإياك وبارك الله فيك وجزاكم الله خير. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وصلوات الله وسلامه على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. One of the it was beautiful recitation from Shaykh Khaled. He said to me at the beginning, what do you like me to recite? And I think there is, I think a couple of people's audios are bringing feedback in. I think Mohammed, yours, and maybe the new one as well. Yeah, there we go. And I wanted to just bring that up because it's a beautiful, it's a fa'idah, actually, because I had no particular ayah in mind. And in actual fact, I wasn't even preparing for the Qur'an to start off our gathering. There's nothing more blessed than the Qur'an in blessing anything. However, it's not a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that whenever every gathering one does, whether it's religious or not religious, that the Qur'an is to be recited from it. And actually, it will be of the sunnah to leave some gatherings out of having the Qur'an recited, just so that everybody is aware that this is not actually a sunnah, but rather a beautiful thing that we should do from time to time, just to ensure that we get the barakah. Barakah itself, blessing for the Muslims, is something more than just spiritual or something just theoretical. You heard the recitation from Shaykh Khalid. It was beautiful. Many of you would have recognized it as well, but many of you would not have not known where it is from. And well, worse, not even know what it means. I mean, you might, many people don't know where certain ayat are in the Quran, but they can understand what it means. Blessing is something which has an illah, meaning that blessing can't just be relegated to, oh, you know what, I just heard some Quran recited and that was it. Whenever you are expecting such a thing, you need to try to invest as much as possible into that process. Try to dig deeper, try to feel that blessing. And so to that extent, I just want to read to you what the Shaykh recited. He recited Surah Al-Ankabut, the opening of it, with the name of Allah, the Lord of Mercy, the Giver of Mercy. He recited Alif Lam Mim. Do people think that they will be left alone after saying we believe without being put to the test? We tested those who went before them. Allah will certainly mark out which ones are truthful and which are lying. Do the evildoers think they can escape us? How ill they judge. But as for those who strive for their meeting with Allah, Allah's appointed time is bound to come. He is the all-seeing, the all-knowing. And those who exert themselves do so for their own benefit. Allah does not need His creatures. We shall certainly blot out the misdeeds of those who believe and do good deeds, and we shall reward them according to the best of their actions. And frankly, I mean, he was put on the spot. He was expecting me to tell him what to recite, so he just chose random. And that is about as good as it gets when it comes to random choosing. The way that Surah Al-Ankabut starts is making it very, very clear that, hey, listen, and that's really the essence of this little presentation, only a short one, and then we'll open up for some Q&A, which is what I really want to get into. But as a reminder to myself and to you all, honestly, do people think that they were just going to be left alone, وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ, يعني that they're not going to be trialed, they're not going to be tested? I mean, do they honestly think that this is some, yani, you know, walk in the park? Life is a walk in the park, that you just go through it and just enjoy every single day as if it's, you know, fantasy, and then you get paradise at the end of it? I mean, people have got to, you know, wake up and smell the coffee. Life is certainly not like that. And the aqil person, someone who's sensible, would not expect to get, you know, all of that for free. There is no such thing as a free lunch, and there is no such thing as eternal Jannah without people being tested. And sacrifice is very, very much part and parcel of the cost that we pay to receive that ultimate prize. And the different type of tests that we might go through will vary from person to person, from era to era, and so on and so forth. And it's very, very topical, actually, when you think about it, with SARS-CoV-2, with which create the virus which creates what we call COVID-19, the condition, in the short term and then the long term with its long-term effects. This is a condition which the world thinks that it is being, you know, royally punished with, okay? Because the whole world's on lockdown. I mean, businesses have just been decimated because of lockdown, and hospitals have come under extreme pressure. But when you actually look at it very kind of, I don't want to say pragmatically, because maybe that's slightly insulting, but certainly in a, try to take the emotion out of it and look at it from a data, statistics, and a factual point of view, you'll realize that actually the coronavirus has not caused the levels or huge levels of death that potentially could be what we would see with a pandemic that is being reported, and the way that it's been mentally felt by all of the people around the world. Like the way that we're in a lockdown, the way that, you know, streets are empty, the way that businesses are closed, maybe not so now because obviously there's key workers and there's certain things and services that are still going. But certainly if you go back to the first lockdown, I mean, it was not just eerie, it was what's the word? Armageddon-esque, you know, complete end of time behavior. People were taking all those pictures and videos of, you know, deserted streets, etc., etc. That kind of image that we were seeing equated to what you would have thought 99% of the population being wiped out, with only a couple of people in hiding left, and all services being broken down, and everyone in pieces, etc., etc. And the truth is that of course is not the case. Anyone from a scientific background will know that the actual death rate, quote unquote, of COVID-19 is relatively low. Coronavirus as a virus that what we call coronavirus, or this SARS-CoV-2, which belongs to the family of coronaviruses, which also includes MERS and SARS, is actually the very little brother of these two big bad boys, because they kill far more people when it comes to their death rate. Okay, so in actual fact, the test, the fitna, the trial that has afflicted the world has not been an equal trial, has not been equally felt by different people on different sides of the world. In the East, it could be argued, and certainly in developing countries, it could be argued that it's business as usual, other than that they've been forced into lockdown when they are entirely dependent upon that type of physical cash labor trade. So they're paying for it, financially, but they never had hospitals to go to, intensive care unit beds to get treated in, services and emergency nurses and healthcare staff to prone patients day and night. Their first thought of illness is, can I get over this at home? Not can I get to the hospital. The developing world, the poorer side, the East in generally, whatever phrase you want to use, for them, this is not a major increase in the problems of every day. As for the West, they have really felt this as a test. And even that is because of their own hands. When I say their, I mean us. Because the lockdowns and the seriousness that the governments are taking this with is primarily because the healthcare systems that we depend upon so much have been overwhelmed. These healthcare systems are something that we expect, that we demand, that we insist upon as a base level for being the citizens that we are, for the taxes that we pay, for the life that we expect to live in a developed country. And in actual fact, it's not because there's more people dying than maybe a comparative disease or whatever. And what this proves to us is that sometimes we create our own tests. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send down something that we make bigger than it actually is. That's why it's actually fascinating. The Sunnah, Anas radiallahu anhu, he narrates from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hadith sahih, that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-barasi wal-jununi wal-judhami wa min sayyi al-asqam, which can roughly be translated, I seek refuge with you, Ya Allah, from leprosy, from insanity, from paralysis, and from sayyi al-asqam, from evil diseases, which you can include plague, and you can put coronavirus into that as well. What's fascinating is the specificity, the way that the Prophet ﷺ didn't say that Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-amradi kullaha. Oh Allah, I seek refuge with you from all illnesses. Because actually we all know that illness is one of those great opportunities to turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many of us, we have a fever or headache, and it really, you really feel it. And you feel weak, and that weakness creates dependency, and that dependency upon the independent is a wonderful feeling. It's a wonderful purification, it really is a refreshing feeling to have if you're not in the zone enough with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you're not having that tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as often as you should be, and you're not making dua to Allah enough as you should be, and you're not making sincere dua where you're broken and you're gutted and you're desperate. These are emotions that sometimes need a little bit of a kick, a little bit of a, an adrenaline boost. And sometimes sickness, illness, difficult circumstances are what people need to take them back. So illness in general is something which is not to be condemned. That's why the Prophet ﷺ sunnah was, when he would see someone who was ill, he would say, La bas, tahurn insha'Allah. It was a very optimistic, happy-go-lucky response. Hey, no problem, man. Inshallah, it's going to be a purification for you. It's going to, clean you up and make you better, make you internally better, spiritually better. And hopefully it's going to, you're going to physically get better as well. La bas. It's an optimistic statement, right? And so, and then his dua, شفاك الله شفاء تاما لا يغادر سقما اللهم رب الناس اذهب الباس. When you look at all the different dua of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's not, oh Allah, I seek refuge with you from illnesses. I'm not saying that's haram, but it's just not his sunnah. He understands the wider concept. Oh Allah, take the disease away. Oh Allah, cure, a complete curing, etc. So it's a very different phraseology. And so what I want to say is that, number one, it is important in this time to recognize that this is not the biggest catastrophe that could ever face us. And I know a lot of parents have been stressed out. And this is obviously something that Mohammed was telling me, that, something that you should maybe address. Our parents have concerns, and it's been a very serious time of anxiousness and anxiety and worry, like for everybody, whether that's financial, whether that's because of health, whether because you're worried about your kids and their education. And it's natural. And I think after this little diatribe, I want you to know that, what, as tests go, there could be much, much bigger, more serious tests. There could be even more serious consequences to this current test. Right now, everybody is getting so excited because vaccinations have hit 20% of the population, incredible speed, ridiculous. Today, I vaccinated 66 people in about 3.5 hours. It was the fastest done, it was insane. And that's because today I had a team of people around me that were doing them admin, blah 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 blah, and it was the AstraZeneca vaccine, which was far easier to administer compared to the other one. People have lost their minds if they think that the solution to a fitna is just a vaccine. I mean, I give the vaccine, I don't have a major problem with it either. I've got some caveats, we'll speak about that later, but this Allah didn't send this test down for us to think that a vaccine fixes it. I'll tell you what a real calamity could be out of this. A real calamity would be, and a real test, and something that would be catastrophic beyond our imagination, after a year in which 2 million people have died. I don't know how many have been infected, and the financial cost, trillions. The future financial cost for the loss of education of the children, they've worked out into be trillions as well. A certain generation that's going to have a number of, it's going to have a greater impact upon GDP. They've done all the economists do the calculation that in 20, 30 years time, 40 years time, GDP will be impacted because this certain year did not take 2 exams, didn't have 2 years of full exams, full examinations, has a knock-on education. Online access is not there for everybody. So you're going to have that particular generation not achieving the intellectual requirements of society to take certain roles, etc., etc., etc. And it's definitely going to have a knock on GDP. That's multi-trillions, by the way. And people are thinking that's the big test. I'll tell you what the big test is, just off the top of my head, that people don't go back to the masajid in about 5-6 months' time. People have got too comfortable praying at home, if they even are praying at home. That people start to, not see Jum'ah as the serious, desperate kind of grab that, people used to have. We missed that, man. 2019, people used to go through mad things to get to Jum'ah, like madness, right? It was so desperate. That desperateness has been killed now completely. It's now, I received an email today from my own local masjid in which I'm the scholar there. Brother, obviously, they don't know, they're sending out in general. Brother, as you got Jum'ah this week, please don't apply for it next week. Like they're literally telling us to, it's like, there's a whole load of people who are receiving that email. They're like, hey, you don't need to tell me twice. I'm chilling, right? That has now, that laxity with our deen has already kicked in. That will be a catastrophe if we do not go back to our classes. We do not go back to our face-to-face sessions. If we do not go back to, and hey, I'm not anti-technology. I mean, look at this. I've got the full setup behavior. I can rock it with any professional online system, people, blah, blah, blah. I can do everything I want online. But the barakah is with people. The barakah is with the jama'ah. The barakah is with the community. And so I just want people to be aware that what you may think is a very difficult moment, what you may think is a very difficult kind of thing, is all to be taken in context of the deen. And so that's just a reminder to myself, and that's not to belittle anybody. We've lost loved ones. We've all lost our friends. We've all lost our relatives. I say all of what I've said, having lost people very, very close to me on a regular basis. I say all of this, having to have gone through the emotional stress of having to wash countless numbers of people. My job is normally to teach people how to do that, the fiqh of death. When I teach the fiqh of death, to teach people how to make ghusl. But in general, the masajid in our country are well managed with elders that do it. The elders had to be taken off the table completely because they had to shield. Suddenly we don't have any trained people. Suddenly the funeral parlors, the masjid refrigerators, and then artificial units have to be set up all over the place to hold on to the bodies while we get people ready. Had that madness in March, April, May, where we're washing multiple people every day. Very emotionally taxing. Get a summer off basically, and then the winter has been non-stop. And I was speaking to one of the brothers in London, does a fabulous service, and it just goes to show that in trials and times, people step up. And so this brother, he's one of the Gujarati brothers, and the Gujis have got things on lock, right? They're such an organized community. I'm speaking as a pack, and he said to his uncle, "Listen, back in the day when you used to do this whole kind of funeral kind of service, you used to have a van. Can I take that van off you?" He said, "Sure." It's his nephew, gave it to him. He hooked up with a friend, and basically he took on the responsibility for certain parts of East London and certain catchment areas around Gardens of Peace and whatever, of basically going around to all of the hospitals and picking up all the COVID victims and taking them to the various masajid on a voluntary basis, and doing their ghusls, training themselves up, PPE, all the rest of it, and then getting the ghusls done. And leaving only the cost, I say only, it's very expensive, especially in London, 3.5 grand, whatever, of just the burial, but saving every single person somewhere near £1,000, £800 in the hearse costs, getting the green form, getting the death certificate, doing the ghusl, all the stress around that, etc., and doing it by practicing people with the izzah, with respect of the deceased, not some kind of wham bam, just mess it up. No, honor, proper. And I remind you, a huge fitna at the beginning of this crisis, yani when Muslims were like, we're not going to wash people. And you know that a number of people, and that's why we shout out Gardens of Peace and Umar there, and a number of the brothers that got together and said, we absolutely refuse and refute this idea that the body is infectious and that it can't be washed. Yani meaning that in every catastrophe, there are little fitnas in between that we don't expect. But the community rises, the education gets taught, the people learn something, and they become tougher, they become more resilient, they become more stronger. But you got to learn from these lessons. And so I know that folks are, worried and stressed about what's happened to them and how the illness spread and they've lost loved ones. I know that people are struggling with the idea that they had to not be there in the last moments of their relatives and thinking that they're alone and so on and so forth. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the wali of alladina amanu, that he is the protector of the people who believe. That's why people who are understand trial, understand in this life, they always stay in the game. They're always doing good actions and good deeds. And those people who are, they're not going to be left alone. It doesn't matter whether you're there or nurses are there or they're at home with the whole family there. You're, as we say in usul, yani wujudihi ka'admi, that his presence is like his absence. If there's a person who is in the zone of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, 1,000 people there will mean nothing. Because when you're there in that moment and you're from the good people, then it's only angels that surround you. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when a person is in his last moments, every direction that his eyes look, so he's lying down, so you see from this angle, from behind, peripheral vision, angels, 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 all around, angels, 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 all waiting to take the soul easily. We don't need no nurses and telling us there's this, that, whatever. So it goes back to actually us learning that lesson, that what gets you through catastrophe and difficult time is just good old standard boring deen, good old standard hard work, good old standard dhikr, Qur'an, salah, yani sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being good to people, not yani being nasty and being yani not having that streak in you, not having that yani that selfishness, always want one up on other folks. Yani these are times that we learn. So I know it's been tough. I've been there as well. I've lost very direct close. My uncle just passed just literally 2 weeks ago, and before him so many other family members as well from all over the world in different countries. There's some that I have to get involved directly and some not. I understand the fact that people were not having conversations, for example, about serious things, right? It shouldn't require a catastrophe of this level for folks to suddenly start, panically talking about wills and the wasiyah and what is it that you actually want to give, what you want to do. And that's why on the Hajj website, we got some professionals to make up a professional proper will that you can go now and download it. And that's one thing that you should do. All of you should go and make sure you go and you download and fill it in, just in case you have literally no idea. A lot of people, that arrogant self that are, I'm 50, I'm 40, the vast majority of deaths are over 17, 80. It's true. The vast majority of deaths were and are over 70. But let me tell you that as someone who is connected to intensive care units, the numbers of 20 and 30 and 40-year-olds has increased manifold compared to the previous 2 peaks of hospitalizations with the new variation. No one should need to know this fact that I've just said to be aware that the Prophet ﷺ, as Abdullah bin Umar narrated by in Bukhari, obligated the writing down of one's instructions of what should happen to me when I pass away. That's an obligation. Ibn Umar said that once I heard that, I made sure that I wouldn't spend another 2 nights except that I would make sure I get this all done. Other of the companions will use every night used to review what they've written. And when I say what we've written, obviously, I don't want to try and teach the whole fiqh of death in 5 minutes, but a wasiyah is different from your inheritance. But being Muslims in a non-Muslim country, first of all, we've got to get control of our inheritance. At the moment, it's default in the government, probate system, and they'll send it to wherever they want to, tax it even as well. Taxing irresponsibly of your wealth is your fault, and you'll be held accountable because your inheritors do not deserve you to be lackadaisical with their money and let it get taxed. So it's got to be tax efficient. It's got to go to the and it's got to be taken from their authority to Islamic authority. After that, of course, the Quran has stated who's going to get what. But there's a big portion, yani from anything from 5, 10, 15, 20, up to a third of your wealth that needs to be instructed, which is outside of the remit of the Quran. Your option, whether you want to give to friends, neighbors, people who don't inherit, charities, you want to give out to, some specific things to specific people, non-Muslims, some community stuff. You've got the spiritual wasiyah, those things that you want yani to be followed. So I know that a lot of people were put into shock they hadn't done it, but it is what it is. We don't yani cry over that right now, but we learned the lesson. And so everybody here should absolutely be thinking, don't worry about what's in the vaccine. Worry about how good a Muslim you are in times of catastrophe. Who cares about the flipping vaccine, right? Obsessed with the vaccine. Everyone's obsessed with the vaccine, right? The truth is that our aqeedah is the number one thing. What's our creed? What's our belief? How do we understand Allah? How do we understand the trial? How do we understand our response as citizens, as Muslims, as responsible adults? That's something that we need to really reflect upon. Anyway, there's so much that can be said in this. And I know that obviously 9:30 is the cutoff, but what I really, really want to do, as opposed to me trying to second guess what you guys want to hear, is I'd like to open it up in a responsible way. And I think the best way for that is, here, what I would do is, I think, Mohammed, what we should do is, first of all, everybody, if you can turn your camera on, I think that would be good, as long as you're obviously decent and everything. And maybe you can activate their microphones, but you guys shouldn't unmute your microphones. But from outside, we get them opened up. And then if you put up your hand, my co-host, Mohammed, you're muted yourself.
You are. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I will then tell you, call you out, and say, yeah, why don't you go ahead and think. When I said raise your hands, by the way, I love the fact that Atiq actually lifted his hands. You sick guy, Atiq. Respect to you, bro. Obviously, yani, mashallah, you didn't suffer from any Zoom disease in this last 1 year. I respect you because you are going to go first, bro. Because you know what? Any guy who on Zoom lifts his hand up when he's told to raise his hands deserves to go first. You're a champion, bro. So just to everyone in the participants list, you'll know the system, what I mean. You have been, as long, Mohammed, as you enable them to be able to raise their hands and to unmute themselves when they get opportunity, then that would be great. But we'll start off, Atiq, with your good self. The kind of questions can be about the legalities of last moments, of just before bereavement, and the vaccine. Any questions that you want to ask? I will summarize the vaccine in, if you don't mind me, Atiq, just 30 seconds. The vaccine is a permissible medicine from the medicines that are available. It's not obligatory. It's even a struggle to sometimes say it's a sunnah, although when a health authority is pursuing a policy of a herd immunity to try to protect the community, then I think it gets raised from permissibility to recommended. And I think a person is rewarded, yani, if they play their part. I do not think that the harms are greater than the benefits, not even close. Islamically, it is permissible to take. There are a number of concerns which are valid, none which affect the fact that its benefits are far greater than its harms. And most importantly, it does not contain anything which is of an impermissible nature. I wouldn't necessarily say blanket everybody should take it, but I don't see any harm in it. And I see reward if person does it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his community. And on that, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. And I know that there are valid concerns, and I'm happy to entertain that. Atiq, go ahead, bro.
Jazakallah for a very a reminder, actually, of what counts. Actually, brother, you addressed my question because I just wanted to ask your thoughts on the vaccine, and you summarized it perfectly. So it took care of my question. Jazakallah khair.
I appreciate you being clear and succinct on that. Jazakallah khair. All right, guys. So any questions on any of the issues? I haven't seen anybody raising their hands. And I don't know whether that's because you're unable to, but
They should be allowed to. I can't see any settings that say they can't. Can I
They're basically saying that I've done such an incredible talk that I've answered every possible question ever, and you know, that's fine. I can probably understand that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead, bro.
So obviously your expertise is around medicine and obviously ilm, but I think many people that I've come across when we're talking about medicines and in particular the vaccine, they prefer to rely on tawakkul than as opposed to getting medicines or scientific help. What can you just express your views on that area?
Yeah. So I mean, you know, there is a valid point there. Okay, in that, one of the major problems with medicines, and this is one of the reasons why the scholars and myself, I'm like a leader in this point because I teach the fiqh of medicines. I will never, unless there is very clear evidence, ever make medicines anything more than permissible. Now you've got to understand that in Islam, what the ahkam al-khamsa are, that something is either haram or disliked or permissible, meaning, right, or recommended or obligatory. To say something is just permissible is about as benign as you can get. And there's a reason for that, despite the fact that I am a specialist in medicines and that it's done so much and we use it for such good. And that is because all medicines come at a cost. And one of the major costs of medicines is that it does reduce one's tawakkul. It is actually a major disaster that people, when they get a headache, instead of holding it and saying, "A'udhu bi kalimatillahi tammati min sharri ma khalaq," which is what you're meant to do, when you've got COVID and you're not able to breathe, instead of holding your chest and saying, "A'udhu bi kalimatillahi tammati min sharri ma khalaq," I seek refuge with your perfect words from the evil that has been created, right? And doing that, right? Okay. People are like, give me the vaccine. People are like, pass me the oximeter. Quickly, let me check how my oxygen's like. Quick, give me oxygen. Quick, call the 9. That shows that our aqidah has become weakened with the advent of emergency, A&E, ambulance systems, 999. And that's a major problem. And that's why scholars, knowing how effective medicines are, still, don't want to go get too far carried away. Now, having said that, and that's why then you got some people who are like, you know what, I'm staying away from medicines. We're just trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever He says, will happen. So here's the problem. This is a great result if you only start trusting in Allah, but it's the wrong methodology of getting there. Because if you believe that this is what Allah intended by not losing trust in Him, you've not understood the religion. Because the Prophet ﷺ, as you all know, said that you put your trust in Allah, but you tie your camel, right? One of the companions came to the Prophet ﷺ. What that hadith means, by the way, is that putting your trust in Allah does not mean that a camel which is about to bolt, you let it go and say, well, if Allah wants me to have this camel in my nasib, then it's going to stay right here or it's going to go and I've got to be happy with it. Hello? Are you kidding me? Right? The Prophet ﷺ said, tie a camel. You're meant to tie a camel. You tie a camel because a camel runs off. You don't say, right, I know it runs off, but you know what? I'm just going to leave it to Allah for it to run off or not. This is madness. This is not deen. You might think that at the end of it, I trusted Allah. That's a consequence, which is a positive one. But the means here were completely haram. And I say that, let me make it clear. Because why is it haram? Because it is a distortion of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a distortion of the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's completely unacceptable to act like this. It really is. And it goes, this point can go into really many different areas. So you tie a camel down. Something which is a very nice hadith. The Prophet ﷺ was asked by one of the companions. He said that ruqya means, when the companions say the word ruqya, they don't just mean saying ayatul kursi and the quls upon someone who's ill. When they say ruqya, they mean all of medicine. That's a fa'idah for students of knowledge. Okay, that it means a hijama, so physical acts, as well as the very spiritual, the faith healing, which is the recitation or incantation of adhkar and Qur'an. But it also means cauterization, which is from which basically means operations. or modern medicine. So it means all three categories, right? So he asked about that. He goes, isn't this against the qadr of Allah? And are we allowed to do ruqya? Isn't it against the qadr of Allah? And the Prophet ﷺ said, it is from the qadr of Allah. It is from the qadr of Allah to treat, to take medicine, to take the means. And the Nabi ﷺ in the hadith sahih, he said, فَتَدَاوَوْا وَلَا تَدَاوَوْا بِالْحَرَامِ. So take medication, but just don't use haram. So it is completely unacceptable for people to say, walk around without masks and say, what if Allah wants me to get ill? Then, not only is it nonsense, but this is a punishable offense because you are putting others at risk when it's been ascertained that it's a disease that can be spread. The Prophet ﷺ made it very, very clear that people should not mix when there's a plague going on. People should not enter an area if there's a risk of you infecting. So how you can justify, because of whatever you think of your belief in your trust in Allah is, that I'm not going to wear a mask or I'm not going to do X, Y, Z, is completely unacceptable. Man, I must be better than I thought, that. Because literally nobody is interested one little bit.
I've got more questions if that helps.
All right, man. You know what? Let's make it at least look like this is a successful talk. Yalla, go.
So there was a British doctor called Andrew Wakefield. I'm sure you know him, but just in terms of everyone else on the call. So in 1998, I think he produced a report that said the MMR vaccine had a link to autism, and he was actually eventually struck off. Now, I think there's still a stigma attached to all of this, where people assume that if you take a vaccine, there are drastic things that can happen. And obviously, we know that with medicines, I don't think there is any medicine that says these are the potential side effects. But of course, when there's fake news, and with the power, unfortunately, of social media, where people are easy to spread information around, what should we be doing to make sure that we get our facts right and to ensure that we're looking at reliable sources of information rather than things like this?
Yeah, I mean, you see, the question you've asked actually is a very specific question, which is what should we do? And I always kind of waffle about this answer, telling people what I want you to hear, which is that which sometimes I think confuses people. And I normally go around and say one of the first things that you should do is to actually understand that it's not haram to be cynical or skeptical and to have some doubts about what you're hearing. And so, you might say, well, Andrew Wakefield was struck off. The industry is against him. It's all a big, whatever. The authorities are against him. And sometimes we just have to say that there isn't always a big conspiracy behind things. Sometimes people can be corrupt. Sometimes people can make mistakes. I'll give you kind of an example. As a pharmacist, when you read the pharmaceutical journal, it's as boring as anything, right? But towards the end, it's the fun part where all the people have been punished for their crimes, right? So you always have a read and you choose, you have a look down and find all the DC names, find all the packies basically and see what they've been up to. And you go and you look at all the names and you're thinking, right, racism, they're just picking on Mohammed so-and-so, Mohammed so-and-so, Mohammed so-and-so. And then you get the call and you say, man, what's happening there? And then they say, by the way, you do know what he did, right? Right? We always want to claim that there's some kind of big conspiracy, but there can be criminals amongst Muslims that are called Mohammed in pharmacy, selling drugs, doing things, blah, 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 blah. My point is that, there is points to be made, but not everything has to be turned into a conspiracy. So I just want to get that out. And that means the same with the vaccine. There are concerns, there are some issues, there are shortcomings, and I've given enough lectures on that. I'm more than happy to tell people about these problems, but you have to assess it. Now, the question that Mohammed asked is the most important, which is that how do you assess it? When you're there online, sensationalist reports or certain stories that tag into your already inbuilt fear that you're feeling, so easy to go down that line. I just want to say to you that we don't need to lose our minds just because the situation is all strange. In a normal time, in a normal scenario, what would you be doing? If it comes to getting medical help, opinion, etc., you would be going to your GP. Now, if you're saying that you wouldn't, then fair enough. Hey, fair enough. Okay. If you're saying that, and this is why I've got respect for people who are honest with me. If you're saying that when you've waited 6 months and you've got the appointment from the consultant, okay, in the hospital, and you're going to go in there and say to him, I didn't, or her, listen, respect, yani, you know, to what you've done, blah, 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 blah. But there's no way that you understand this better than I do. Okay. And if you say that to all your doctors and all your nurses and all your pharmacists when you get medicine and all the operations and whatever, whatnot, okay, then I give you the permission to spread fake news, or spread, not fake news, even true news, what you think is true news, and to tell people that it's all a hoax and there's this and there's that. Then fair enough. But if you have got your brain screwed on, and your scholars are your scholars in the normal times, and your doctors are your doctors in the normal times, and your sources of knowledge are your sources of knowledge in the normal times, then there's no reason for, and they're publicly accountable, and you know them, and you can find, you know, whether they're corrupt or they're getting paid by big pharma or blah, blah, whatever, then there's no reason in the times of fitna to turn away from them. And the community is always upon the haqq in general. And it's just worrying that, you know, certain voices get thingied. Right, okay. Jazakumullah khair. Right, we'll start with Jahanara, who is, mashallah, a pioneer in the science of putting their hands up via Zoom, deserves at least 2 questions. Go ahead, Jahanara. Unmute yourself, bro. I know you're a sister, but I call everybody bro. Why are you not unmuting your... There you go. All right, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Salam rahmatullah.
Talk. I just had a couple of questions. First of all, the issue with the virus affecting majority of Black and ethnic minority groups. What's your views on that?
Okay, so let's do it one by one, because I'm not very good with memory. So you said majority of, let's just be very clear. It has a slightly, but significantly slightly, meaning 6%, 7% higher impact upon certainly Black, and then South Asian, not all Asian. So East Asian, for example, not so much, but there's something happening with the South Asian community, and it's not very clear whether it's linked to socioeconomic, although we know that in deprived areas, all the people are more infected than the more well-off areas. So it's difficult to kind of completely say that it is institutionalized racism, that it's years of X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. It's difficult. But there is definitely a statistically significant higher risk to Black and minority ethnic, specifically South Asian. Not all of the ethnic minorities, number one. Certainly not the majority, of course not. We're talking 16%, 17%, that kind of numbers. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but they are, it's real. But what the reasons are, I mean, again, right? You can go to the government, or you can go at the government and say, this is racism, this is X, this is Y, they want this to happen, they're trying to, you know, wipe us out, right? You can have that kind of crazy, literally crazy attitude. Or you can say, you know what, they might have made mistakes and historically they haven't done good things, and, you know, but at this moment they've thrown all of their resources. Okay, it might be for their own benefit, because if we're sick, then they're going to get sick. So I'm not talking about their intention, but they've thrown significant resource. I mean, I'll tell you one significant resource, which is a right pain in the backside. I told you I did 66 vaccinations this morning. I would never have been able to have done that if I didn't have the administrator doing it. And that administrator, why is it so important? Because just because of the problem of the BAME problem, they've actually introduced 2 extra questions that need to be answered to look at the data to understand just the impact of vaccines on the ethnic minorities. And I want you to understand that when you've only got 2-3 minutes to vaccinate someone, and you've got to go through more questions and tick more boxes, that's costing money, all right, and a lot of money, and a lot of time, and this is just one small example. So I do believe that the government are trying to work out what's going on. There is something serious there. We don't know what it is. Go ahead. I mean, Nuzha obviously has put a few ideas forward, and there's lots of discussion. There's lots of very interesting reports that we could attribute it to. But the correct answer is to say scientifically, and so we can say anecdotally, we can put a lot of things forward, but scientifically, we cannot put our finger on exactly what the main reasons are just yet. But we're getting close. Go ahead, Jahanara.
Is that just research that's been done in the UK, or has that been research that you've been used worldwide?
It is international, because this it actually came apparent in America first, by the way, before the UK. It was the Americans who reported on this discrepancy. And as Nus has said, obviously there is a historical problem, right? Especially in the Black community, right? So the Black community has been around longer than, in general, as an immigrant population in the Western world. The Black community have been there quicker than or longer than the Asian or the Arab or the Desi kind of community, and they've had firsthand experiments, forced sterilizations, all the nonsense and bakwas and oppression and kufr that we expect from the kuffar at that time. So there is an intense level of distrust. But does that necessarily equate into a higher clinical rate of death than long COVID? No. That's difficult. And that's what needs to be found out. And they're looking into that.
Yeah, because initially I thought it would be more to do with the majority working in hospitals are from black and ethnic minority, and also
which would have been easy to prove, right, Jahanara? Because then they'd be able to say only in health workers. The problem is it's not, right?
Yeah.
If that was the case, because you're right, we're a higher percentage, and it'd be straightforward. We're a higher percentage of our population, so we die more. So that's obvious. But if we're dying at the same levels in a completely different, separate zone, profession, community, that's where the problem is.
Okay. And my second question was about the vaccine. Obviously, on social media, you're getting all the conspiracy theories, etc. But was that they developed this vaccine rather quickly, and they're given the vaccines, but they've got different now. So it's the actual what is the rate at which you will, avoid getting the virus, because there's the virus strain is changing. So like before it was the elderly, but now everybody is more susceptible. And also people are actually worried about children going back to school as well, because the younger children have tested positive. I know they're mostly carriers and not had as much effect, but it is seeming that it is spreading quicker amongst the younger population at the moment. So will this vaccine that's available now cover other strains? And also having it, will that produce more super viruses that may evolve as a result of not being able to work against this vaccine?
So
if that
yeah, I understand. Yeah, jazakumullah khair. All right, so there's a couple of questions there. Let me unpack that. So first of all, on the idea of will taking more vaccines or more iterations of a vaccine increase the likelihood of super viruses and so on, that actually isn't as crazy a theory as you may think. And obviously you don't think it's crazy, but I just want to make it clear that there is some theory behind that. At the moment, it's just theory. In antibiotics, we've seen a version of that, right? So there is that kind of concern. But then at the same time, the exact opposite of that, which is to not take vaccines, ironically, has actually, at the moment, definite scientific proof that increases mutations and the potential of super viruses. Why? Because if a virus is left unchecked and then gets slapped a little bit with a bit of a lockdown, bit of a bit of a good immune system, vitamin D kicking in, sensible people, so it gets a few slaps like that, it starts to then realize I need to try and change my game. And this is what we call the increased likelihood of mutations when it's left to transmit unchecked. And so the less people who are actually vaccinated, it's like a evil, whatever they're called, vicious circle, yeah. Actually, in a reverse way, also allows mutations to occur and to get worse, whether that means to kill more people, which currently hasn't happened, or to infect more people, which has happened, to infect more younger people, which has happened. So the least of our concerns right now, even though it's a valid concern, is whether these vaccines and increased vaccines is going to cause bigger problems. That door has been opened. That horse has bolted. There's no coming back from that, by the way. All right. Let me just also, whether you like it or not, and I don't like it, but that's gone. All right. So we're in the middle of now the vaccine era. It's only going to increase, not going to decrease. All right. Respect to someone who's living off the grid, doesn't eat genetically mutated foods, doesn't eat anything, doesn't drink anything, all the modern foods and whatnot. They don't take medications to keep themselves pure. Top of the morning to you. But these folks are few. The reality is the modern world has created the system that we're in. As for the question on does this current vaccine, is it going to solve the problems of the current mutations? It will solve enough to allow us to be able to put into, because frankly, yeah, getting ill and dying is a big problem, but the number of businesses and people's livelihoods is honestly killing people as well. It's a major problem. And so as important as it is to be able to completely knock out every mutation, it's far more important to have a base level of herd immunity where we might have 90% efficacy against the old strain or the standard UK strain, but only 50 to 60% against the South African or the Brazilian or the Kent variation, for example. We take that in a heartbeat, because efficacy over 50% is accepted by most health regulatory bodies as a successful vaccine. Because I want to remind you, to protect a population from a pandemic, just from the science, it doesn't matter what you believe about vaccines or not, okay? Just the science, we know that you don't need to protect or vaccinate 100% or even 90% or even 80%. It's always between 60 to 70%. And that's a simple math model, because everybody, the way that they interact with people, etc., etc., etc. Likewise, you don't need to have a vaccine which is 99 or 100% efficacious. If it's actually over 50% in efficacy in terms of protection, you will have a huge impact upon getting rid of that virus and the pandemic or the plague or whatever it is in general. And so at the moment, it is not engineered towards these mutations, but it's providing enough cover to get to the next stage, which is to get most folks basic cover, get the hospitals down a bit, get the pressure down a bit, the deaths down a bit, right? People are going to die anyway, so we're not saying going to stop everyone dying, and allow then the next version that is going to be specifically aimed at the mutation, which is what we do every year, by the way, with the flu vaccine. Every year it's different. People don't realize that. But it's because the media and everything's all, we're in the middle of a pandemic. But every year we change the flu vaccine. So they'll have the autumn stock will be ready at the end of the year. And that will then be, we'll go into that with the new one. And we'll keep that, and then it will change again, and we'll have to then change with it, and it will change again, and we'll have to change with it. So in general, it's something that we are going to go with. All right. I know that we're kind of coming towards the end of time, so let's do Nadira's question. Yasser, give me just 1 second, because she did put the question up early. She says, do you have any advice on how we can deal with those, even some family members who don't believe in the vaccine and follow all the fake news and fear mongering, especially those who put doubts in the minds of our elders? Now that the last person you want to ask is me, because I've had enough of those people, right? You have no idea just how much stress that they cause me, and how much they curse me and swear at me and this and that. Alhamdulillah, I might have got my ticket to Jannah from them, because I certainly wasn't going to get there with my own good deeds. So that's a plus point. But don't ask, because I've got nothing but anger and I can't be dealing with that. So I'm not the right person to respond. Obviously, I could say patience and keep at it and try to show them all the truth and try to show them to authority. But we all know that it's just been so tough, man. Yasser, go ahead, bro.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. Jazakallah khair for the lovely talk. Really, really inspiring. Just a quick question in relation to other kind of medication, sunnah medications, black seed oil, ajwa dates, anything else from your, mashallah, your medical understanding, your pharmaceutical understanding, anything else that you may know may combat this particular virus? Yes, that you can recommend.
Yeah, exactly. Good question. In his right place as well. Go on.
That's it. I was just going to say, especially whilst the majority of us, young blokes like us, won't get the vaccine immediately unless you're frontline, NHS, etc. So something that we can actually use temporarily until the vaccine is available for us. If you can enlighten us, that'd be great.
So let me state very clearly that there is nothing that has been mentioned in the Sunnah specifically for viruses, stroke, plague in terms of medication specifically. And that's important because we do actually have some hadith that specify for certain conditions, such as Some people get a lot of back pain and sciatica, for example, L3, L4 pain. And we have hadith that are authentic that specify the exact type of fat to be cooked from animals, etc., etc., etc. Wild sheep, wild goats, different hadith. So we do have, hadith that make that clear. However, black seed oil, for example, is always in the game. Ajwa dates are always in the game. So a person who takes that with the intention of cure and protection, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give that person protection from all illnesses, as the hadith says, except death, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills that. People think that it's just an automatic cure. Actually, nothing is an automatic cure, not even conventional medication. So that's important. There is no specific sunnah medicine in a specific sense, but there are the general medications. For example, the general adhkar in the morning and in the evenings for the protection from illness. A lot of people forget that. That's far more emphasized than taking specific medications. And people are, of course, obsessed with vaccines. They forget the adhkar. The other thing which is important is the general concepts of immunity. We know that the Prophet ﷺ is big on immunity. Rest and good diet and good eating is important. We have very clear evidence that obesity is a major problem. Significant body fat, significant levels of cholesterol, major problem. If your cholesterol is high, you can do nothing better than right now really going hard at that. Taking out all the foods that you know are going to cause a problem. If you have to, then okay, take a statin as well. But then you've got many other herbal and plant sterols, which are natural kind of substances that a person can take that will reduce cholesterol as well. So body fat and cholesterol is being found in so many COVID victims. It's sunnah to not be overweight, to not be having food which is creating that kind of high cholesterol. Immunity, of course, is a sunnah, as I said, and vitamin D is very important for that. Very important. Yeah, I know that there are some scientific studies which are not, glowing about it, but none have said that it is a negative. Yeah, listen, I'm a scientist. The peer-reviewed papers do not show huge, overwhelming, significant evidence for vitamin D in clinical trials. However, the anecdotal evidence for vitamin D is mad, it's huge. And so certainly, and very cheap as well. So those are the kind of things that I would say from a prophetic standpoint. Yasir, Jazakallah khair for your question. Let's take one from, and Imran, that means all, it doesn't mean natural. Every illness having a cure certainly does not mean natural. And by the way, there's a lot of misunderstanding about natural. If I said to you digoxin, if I said to you aspirin, you wouldn't be thinking that's natural. However, they come from natural sources, right? In its fundamental sense, I mean. Don't think that natural just means, you walking in a garden of flowers and picking up some elderflower and munching on it like a cow, right? That's not natural medication. The all medication is part of Inna Allah anzala ad-da' wa anzala ad-dawa. Dawa is a general phrase talking about everything. And one of the proofs of that, of course, is that the Prophet ﷺ said, Tadawa wa la tadawa bil haram. Don't use haram. And from natural substances, there is no haram in natural substances. It's when you start mixing things together that haram gets in. That's just a side point, interesting point for you. Majid says that a lot of women are concerned about how taking a vaccine might affect fertility in women. Previous guidance said it's not known if the vaccine will cause fertility problems, but unsafe for pregnant women. The guidance has now changed to say it is safe. What are your thoughts on the effects of the vaccine on fertility? It's a very important question. My honest thoughts are as follows. First of all, you have to understand that when it comes to drug testing, okay, it's a risky thing, all right? So it goes through, as you all know now, everybody's an expert now, but it goes through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Effectively, what it means is that if we can get to test on animals to have a general idea, we start off with that. Then we get a very small group of people who are super fit, super strong, super up for it, get paid good sum of money. They're told very clearly, you could die from this. Yeah, we ain't got no idea what's going to happen. We tested it in a rat, and that means nothing. And they're saying, you know what, we take one for the team. We're desperate, blah, blah. And so we give it to those folks, and we see the results. If it's positive results, if it kills off everybody, it's game over. If it's not, then we go to a smaller second group. And then it goes to a big group, phase 3 clinical trials. I want you to imagine, okay, I want you to imagine that if you are the drug company, or you are the general public looking at the drug company, or if you're the authorities or whatever, you know that there are certain red lines, okay? Now, a healthy volunteer who got paid dying, or a healthy, or someone who was willingly being part of the trial in stage 3, having a bad response and dying, it's palatable, quote unquote. No death is palatable, but you get what I'm saying. A child dying, a pregnant woman dying, a woman not being able to then become pregnant, these are completely unacceptable red lines emotionally, not scientifically, emotionally. Society would never accept that, which is why no clinical trials are done with these kind of groups of people, which is why no drug and no vaccine in principle ever, historically, very few minor exceptions, are ever released in the market saying it's good for kids, it's good for pregnant women. You'd be mad to say that, right? Even if it's absolutely the most benign medication and there's hardly any kind of risk of anything going wrong, still you wouldn't say that, because the risk and the comeback is just is madness. You'd be crazy. So you need to know that comes with all new medications, all new drugs. With that being said, okay, is there something in these vaccines that gives us an indication that it's a danger in fertility? From a scientific point of view, the majority say no, and I say no, that there is nothing there that you should be worried about for the future. And that's my belief. That's genuinely my belief. You don't always need to be able to prove that. Now, will we know for sure? Absolutely not. It will take years for us to find out, right? It will take years, because you'd have to have a whole number of women reporting that they can't become pregnant. And then going back and seeing what have you done over the last 5-10 years. They say we had the COVID vaccine there, COVID vaccine there. Then doing all it will take years to find that out. As it stands, there's no major fear of that. Allah knows best. The pregnancy one's very different. We're not going to test in the pregnant women, but women become pregnant, right? You can't stop women become pregnant, even in the trials. And that's what happened. So we're not going to actively go out and try it on a pregnant woman. But if they become pregnant and they're okay, and you look at the numbers and you see, what I just said to you about the fertility, that in the vaccine itself, there's nothing teratogenic, meaning that there's nothing immediately that we would know that it's going to cause a problem, like methotrexate does, like isotretinoin does. But at the same time, not only are we not worried about it, but then we've actually got large numbers now of women that were pregnant and had babies whilst they had COVID, whilst they had the COVID vaccine, whilst they were in a trial, not intending to become pregnant, which is why the guidance has changed that pregnant women, it's okay as it stands. Now, does this mean that there's no possibility of anything happening? No, it's not. There's always a risk, always a risk. But as life is, you do benefits over risks. You look and you weigh it up, and that's it. Zinat Siddiqa is asking, how important is vitamin D for us? It is important, especially for ethnics, especially for Desis, especially for brown Muslims who need that kind of exposure more, don't get enough of it in this country, used to it from before, especially women covering up. People used to say this is racist and Islamophobic. It's not, actually, it's true. There's always inside, which is great, modesty, great, all the rest of it. But yeah, we need some vitamin D, and there's not enough to take from outside anyway. So Hux D3 is a very good one. Hux D3. I'll show you a picture of a packet. Good halal one, good pure one. Let's see if you can see a picture of that. Maybe you can see that. I'm not too sure, but that's a Hux D3, 20,000 international units. All right, it's like non-gelatine, non all the rest of it. I think you can see that's a good brand. But see your doctor, see your pharmacist, for doses. I'm not going to be doing that. We can't be taking responsibility for that. If someone has taken the vaccine in the UK, is this likely to protect them from coronavirus in another country, or will a different strain be resilient to this vaccine? As it stands, we haven't come across a strain that's resilient. You'll get general coverage at the moment. Allah knows best. However, let me make it clear, as I said on Facebook today, that we should not be encouraging anyone who's taken the vaccine to go and travel anywhere until 12 days after the second dose. That's when your proper immunity has kicked in. Okay, we are allowed vaccinations whilst fasting in Ramadan. Okay, a lot of people have had their first dose and their second doses are meant to be in Ramadan, right? Our elders, and you should tell them, and they're very stressed about that kind of thing because they're religious, good people, unlike the Pendus that we are. So you tell them that no, they can carry on fasting and they can receive that injection, and it does not break the fast, according to the vast majority of scholars of all the madhahib, by the way. Okay, I've been told that vaccines take 10 to 12 years to go live. This vaccine has taken less than a year. Isn't that a worry itself? It's a worry if you don't understand actually what happens in a clinical trial normally. Then it's a worry. It's not a worry when mRNA vaccines that people are running, you know, the brains over have been used for 10 years when it comes to technology in chemotherapy. We use it and have used it in a targeted way without any problems. It is not a worry when you know that the virus that you're aiming at, and you know, a lot of people laughed at Matt Hancock, right? He came out yesterday, said that, you know, I watched Contagion, the film, and we got ready as a result. You know, that's actually true. The one of the side focuses of the producers was to make sure that we're going to get this so scientifically accurate and get the consultants involved so that this can become a test case for the future. So a lot of people were ready in terms of their technology, just even from films, let alone the fact that we've had SARS and MERS that makes us understand coronavirus, which is the generic name, very well. And then you got money thrown at it. You've got, you know, and there's no doubt that the third stage has been shortened, slightly, not shortened, but the numbers people may think are less than normal. In actual fact, when you're in the middle of a pandemic, each person is worth 1,000. The value of your test subjects, because most of the time when you're trying to create a vaccine for a disease, you've got to test it against the disease, but you can't find enough people who are diseased. So it takes ages. Bro, you're in a pandemic. Everybody's ill. It's amazing. It's the perfect circumstances, frankly. And I know that it freaks people out, but you honestly, that is the least of your concerns, the least when it comes to the side effects or any problem. Masajid are closed. Do they have a legitimate concern? Yes, I think so, especially in London with the way that it was spreading. I don't think they should get any hate for that. I think that they should put a soft kind of closure on it. I don't think they should, you know, cut off completely, but just kind of think that, listen, guys, we prefer you to pray at home, and, you know, in a way where, especially the elderly, especially those who are vulnerable, and even the rest of the masses as well. But the masjid keeps open for the jama'ah to continue, the imam and a couple of people. No problem with that, and that's what most folks have done. Right, I've gone way over time. So I apologize, guys. I know that I was meant to finish at 9:30, but you know, good luck and making me stop any time earlier, anything. But I appreciate all of your I appreciate your attendance, and I appreciate your focus. Jazakumullah khair. Take it away, bro.
Jazakallah khair, and thank you so much for your time. We know you're very busy. We just wanted to say a big thank you from everyone at Dar Al Rahmah, from all the guests, and including Sister Zina Siddiqa, who is the founder and head teacher of the institution. Please make dua for all of us, and continue the good work that you're doing. And inshallah, we'll see you soon. Inshallah, maybe even for Hajj.
Inshallah. Allah yahfadkum jami'an. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take us all. Allahumma ameen ya Rabb. Allahumma ameen. Jazakumullah khair, everybody, and to Dar Al Rahmah. Allah yabarik feekum. Yallah, salam.